Men always say, oh, women are so emotional and so hysterical and so dramatic. That's another way they protect themselves. Invading each other's countries, for example, is about the most dramatic, highly emotional thing that men do anyway. I shouldn't really feel sad. It's like, well, yeah, my family died yesterday. Do you think that's acceptable to feel sad? Yeah. If you didn't, you'd actually be a psychopath. All of this stuff about cognitive reframing, I think you were asking me about that, doesn't work. It's like, shouting to the basement from the attic. It doesn't work. Naturally, we re-regulate because the nervous system has got its flipping guidance system back.
Dysfunction is everywhere. In our families, in our cultures, and in our systems. And this is Dysfunctional, the podcast that helps you name the things that most people can't or won't see. Let's call it out, break it down, and maybe even start a bloody revolution.
So today I am joined by Sam Miller, who teaches mind-body recovery through a trauma-informed Jungian lens and emotional processing. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Josh.
I am very excited to speak to you today, actually. YouTube shows you videos, right? So you just... I wasn't looking for podcast guests or anything, but you popped up. The title of the video, I'm going to get it wrong, but it was something about stop obsessing about regulating the nervous system, something like that.
Oh, yes.
Which was a bit jarring to read, yeah? Because I was like, and I love that, yeah? Like when something jars me like that. So I went in and listened to it and I thought, this is brilliant. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are based on that?
Well, who am I? That's a big and deep question philosophically and beyond. I basically try and help people recover from mind-body conditions, having done so myself, and understanding that there's a trauma substrate, understanding that dysregulation is not what we think it is, that most people who think they are ill are actually in the process of healing if they know how to look at it. The majority of people I initially started working with, people, chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, long COVID, but it's the same thing effectively. These are all the same condition presenting in different ways. Okay, these are effectively repressed parts of ourselves speaking through symptoms and emotions. Okay, so whether it's fatigue, headaches, gastrointestinal problems, histamine issues, whatever it might be, it is what we would now colloquially called dysregulation. We now see dysregulation as a symptom, a cluster of symptoms, but obviously, we want to understand why we dysregulated, because the body does not ever make mistakes if you understand its deeper wisdom and it's the deeper order of things. And that's my shtick, basically.
That's what got me, I think, because I've got like a little bit of a gripe with sometimes the way that the Western world wants to frame every struggle as we have as like a bit of a malfunction in the brain, right? And you're saying
there's no mistake. There's no mistake. Let me just say one thing on the offset. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing, as we know, and this is my gripe I have to get. We live in late stage capitalism, which is monetizing everything, and part of that is the wellness sphere, because everyone is in crisis, because everyone is dysregulated for reasons they don't understand, and so it's become another vehicle, if you like, for some people to effectively prey on vulnerable, weak, distressed people who've lost their own compass for whatever reasons of trauma. And I feel there's quite a lot of abuse and misinformation that's not only ineffective, it can actually be harmful. You can have people going down the wrong route for years and years and years. And I know this because I've tried a lot of those things in the past before I worked out what it is. But people are not actually really informed as to the big picture. And I think that can be doing a terrible disservice to people, because understandably, if you are suffering with intense symptoms, let's just say, for example, gut issues, like the world is now gluten intolerant, okay? It's easy to think it's because you actually are intolerant to gluten. That would be a sensible, logical thing, rather than understanding why has this happened to me? What is going on behind this? And to frame it within a context that goes beyond your immediate conscious understanding. And one of the comforting things is that you look at everybody who is presenting with these issues has a trauma substrate. And that is a priori to developing these things. So there will be a point at which we lost contact with our true selves and our nature. And by true selves, I mean obviously self, who we are in a Jungian sense, our true selves, our nature, our authentic selves, but really with our body. And the fundamental functions of the body, the fundamental regulating aspect of the nervous system is emotion.
Right.
And it's not an add-on, it's not a mental interpretation, it's not a psychological thing. Emotions are biological, physical imperatives, okay? And they are the thing that regulates the nervous system. So we have to get back that which has been disowned, because as children, you'll know this, if we weren't able to experience our emotions to completion in a normal way, in a way that's held, validated and encouraged by our caregivers and our environment and culture, we split them off. And that is splitting off not just a part of us, because we have to become something that is acceptable to society. We split off this gut navigational truth that is the regulator of the nervous system. Now, shall I go on, or do you want
Please go on.
Because
no.
this is the main thing. As we get to a certain age and we start to heal, all this stuff is as we start to this is where healing starts to come in, is we get really, really sick. And all of this repressed, squashed emotion, these parts of the nervous system regulation, part of the dynamic system in the body that's been put into what's called the shadow by Jung. It's just a repository of things we weren't able to feel because it got us into danger, it got us rejected, criticised, judged, and it wasn't acceptable to culture. Okay, for example, if you happen to be gay in a culture that says you're not allowed to be, you will repress that consciously initially, and then it will become unconscious. And this is what we do the whole time when we formulate an acceptable self of ourself, which is our persona, which is mediated by the ego. All this stuff is still then there. All these emotions you weren't able to feel, they are energy, they are real things, they are an energetic charge, and they're building up and up and up and up and up until the system cannot hold, and it's like, there she blows, it comes through. Now the ego has said, we're not allowed to do anger, because when we did anger as a kid, we got hit, or we're more in danger. So I had a violent father, who was partial to a drink and this and the other and blah, blah, blah. And if I cried or I showed anger, that would be dangerous for me. I would get hit. I would be whatever. There would be consequences. So I learned to suck it up and not do that. That went in there. I actually developed a personality which felt I don't really do anger. I don't really cry that much. Meanwhile, these charges are still being brought into the body because these are biological imperatives, okay? Your system at a subconscious level is always reading what's going on out there to bring it in here. You've got 6 senses, 5 senses, and a mind, which is always trying to keep you safe and navigating you through the world, okay? It's telling you what is for you dangerous, which is threat, or what's opportunity. So it's leading you towards things that are in alignment with you, because it's also reading who you truly are in relation to your nervous system, your capacity, the environment. And then it gives you, it shoots off these things called emotions, which come up to your midbrain and then get made into meaning. And then you go, boom, do that, not do that. Okay. But we've suppressed that. And so what we have now is a version of that, which is a sort of mental interpretation, okay? Now, I started off this particular sort of point by saying there's a myth out there, particularly in the mind-body world, that your brain is always trying to protect you, okay? To some extent, that's true. It's trying to protect who it thinks you are, and you are not this fake version that doesn't do emotions, etc. So if the version that the brain thinks you are is that I don't cry, I don't do emotions, I don't feel, I'm always perfect, I'm da 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 da. If when this amount of repressed energy, the tears you never cried, the anger you never felt, are coming up, and now they're having to come through the body as symptoms because it's the only way they can be felt. The ego goes, oh my God, we don't do that. So what it does is it kicks back even harder, and we enter into this push me, pull you of your body naturally trying to heal itself through symptoms. By the time you get symptoms, this is healing happening. This is actually the healing process. But the ego finds it so abhorrent because you might be subjected to things that are quite unpleasant. I mean, healing it feels like shit. Let's be honest about it. A bit like a detox does.
Yeah.
And some of your, I don't know enough about your audience, but a lot of people will have used drug and alcohol, or it certainly will have come from backgrounds where drug and alcohol were used, like with my father, with alcohol. And therefore, when one cleans oneself out, you're going to feel shitloads worse the third day of a heroin detox than you did the last day you were taking it. But it's like anything that you're cleaning out, it has to go through your consciousness to be completed. And this is where the mistake lies. And obviously this often presents as the symptoms that we think are the problem, but they're actually the end of, they're the solution coming out. So that headache, those chronic migraines, are actually the anger you weren't able to feel, trying to come to completion, to come back into the flow. And we're going, oh no, I'll suppress it by taking headache medication or whatever. And then the energy just goes back into the system over and over again. So it keeps representing until we finally allow it to be there, effectively let it vomit itself up. And then that emotional energy is given back to the nervous system, which will re-regulate. As it does that, we no longer need symptoms as proxies, as surrogates for the emotions we didn't feel. And then one day, when you start to, more and more and more, we start to feel our emotions. And you'll have to ask me about this because it's more than we can just go into the details of, probably just in the short time we have. But it's simpler than you think. It's just allowing symptoms, allowing emotions authentically to come up. And I will help, give a little exercise of how we do that. Eventually, the bucket gets empty. Your symptoms just vanish. And guess what? You're regulated. You will re-regulate.
I have a real life, quite simple example of what you've just spoke about, right? Mm-hmm. A genuine real life. So I went through a lot when I was a kid. My dad was an alcoholic. He died when I was 9. When I was started senior school, so 11, 12, I used to get terrible migraines. Terrible migraines, right? And they did everything, right? They put me on beta blockers, I think, at one point. I went and had a brain scan, done all this. And then I found alcohol and drugs. And
lovely state change.
Yeah, headaches went, right? Beautiful. So then I stopped getting headaches from the age of about 13 because I was just drinking and taking drugs until I got sober 13 years ago.
Bam!
And then the headaches came back, right? And so I went to the doctors when I was about, 2 years, 3 years sober. And I'd doing what I'd always taught to do, which was take a heavy dose of ibuprofen and paracetamol at the same time, because that's what they taught me when I was a kid, when you get bad migraine. Mm-hmm. And I went to see this doctor, and I started the journey, So I was starting to look at myself in a new way. And I went to this doctor, and I explained everything. And he said to me, I think they sound like tension headaches. And then he said, you could get them from stress, or it could be when emotions are coming up and all this. And he, at the time, told me to try a mindfulness app. And he said, I'm going to give you a really strong ibuprofen. He said, but what I want you to do is only ever use this if you've tried to solve it yourself.
Wow, what a good doctor.
Yeah, right?
Bloody
incredible.
hell.
And this was 10 years ago.
Yes.
Right, and I kid you not, I still get them every now and then, but when I get them, there's always a reason, and I know it. But I've never heard somebody explain it in the way that you did, but in that, I always say that doctor healed my headaches by giving me the truth.
Yes, he did.
Rather than treating it as a symptom.
So do you see, you were never broken.
Yeah.
You were never
100%,
broken.
I do,
It's just that the version of you had to become, little Josh, that wasn't allowed to feel anger because he'd get walloped or this, that, the other. It would be so overwhelming for him. He just had to kind of shut down and then use drugs to do that as well. That that was just this was the thing, because
Yeah.
you're not this thing. You're not this version that you think you are.
Yeah.
And anybody, and this is the thing that Helmut and I talk about a lot, anyone who claims themselves to be healed, and there are people out there everywhere on the net saying, I healed from this. You know, you can heal from something for 1 year, 2 years, and then bam, oh dear, I've got a new symptom, because you haven't got to the root. It's just migrated and moved around. And one of the ways you can tell that people have truly been on this journey is they are completely different, but more themselves.
Yeah.
They are like the truer version of themselves. They might even look the same, but they are completely different. They are changed from the inside out.
Yeah.
And it's a return to what you are. And you can take off this costume and actually reveal what you are underneath. So that is proof. And when you see that with you with the headaches, I mean, it's pretty much always anger with headaches, I would say.
Yeah, I think it was, because you know what was one of the things.
Not always, but
but one of
sometimes
the things that I realized, I remember when I first started genuinely like committing to trying to find the truth of what I was struggling with. I've been an ambassador for a charity that supports children of alcoholics now, but I remember saying to somebody there, I've never been angry at my dad. And then I was like, and as I said it, I was like, something wrong with that. And then I realized I've been at, like, I was, when I was in my early adulthood, fighting at football on the weekend.
Why do you think men have to go and fight? When I was working in Pentonville, I met a couple of Chelsea headhunters, okay?
Yeah.
And they like football, but the main thing was to go and have the fight afterwards.
Yeah.
Why? Because it was a safe discharge of the emotion they weren't able to feel. Exactly that.
And
thing.
we sort of knew it. We sort of intuitively knew it, because I was involved in it in similar ways, right? But we didn't rationally in that way know it, but we all knew collectively, we're not trying to hurt anyone here.
No,
we
we're
would
trying
never
to let off steam.
We're not trying to fight
It's
anyone
not
that doesn't
personal.
want to have a fight. It's
Yeah.
not personal. We were friends with people that we would have fights with if we were playing their team, and we all collectively knew this is where we come and let off steam. I always say that football is the one place where it's socially acceptable for men to come and cry and release emotion.
Oh my God. When I was at work, it's like, your team's finished, you can cry, everyone's like comforting, you can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And for working in prison as well, you can't be vulnerable, because being vulnerable as a child would have killed you, because, like for you. And, hating your father would have made you actually physically vulnerable if he was an angry person, but also it would have opened that younger part of you to the fact that, my God, my daddy's let me down. So we have to create a fiction of someone who isn't something they are, because we just need that to get ourselves to the next stage.
Do you think that's what a lot of people are doing in the wellness space, right? As in, I feel like what I see a lot in the wellness space, and I know, so let me try and formulate what I want to say in a minute. I get a lot of men in the men's space end up falling out with me and I don't even know them, right? And I feel like what happens is that like shadow stuff all plays out, right? And people don't even know that that's what's going on.
Of course not.
And I think
They're projection.
There's this rational wellness healing space now, which is where everyone just plays a new character, and it's a character that's doing the healing work.
You're exactly right. It's mostly ego-led.
Yeah.
And like I say, what brilliant trick of the ego to keep you away from that part that was so dangerous is to performatively do wellness. Okay, so
Yeah.
you've got men empowering themselves. Like, I kind of sort of take the piss. That I know you do some breath work. I think you said.
Yeah.
Now, breath work can be very dangerous if you're dysregulated, of course.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's performing an ego sense of strength and actually can be re-initiating and re-traumatizing and re-sensitizing a
Yeah.
system that's trying to complete. Now, there's a place for breath in reconnection.
Yeah.
And when you start to feel your emotions, it's amazing. When you do the emotional work, you will actually be doing the thing that breathwork's trying to mimic. You'll be doing breath of fire, then be and all of this stuff. And it's self-led. It comes from the body, because the body said, we're now ready to move this round. So you've got all these dear men, bless them, stripped to the waist, like I say, in forests with the neck tattoos, being kind of, doing breath of fire with drums, getting in touch with their primalness. And actually they just want to be vulnerable enough to collapse, to cry, to feel a bit shitty and have someone comfort them, and then back in the game. And like, you know, this is another thing, is showing that connection. Another thing I always laugh about is, you know, men always say, oh, women are so emotional and so hysterical and so dramatic. That's another way they protect themselves. I mean, invading each other's countries, for example, is about the most dramatic, highly emotional thing that men do anyway. And if you've seen men at the pub, you know, when they're really pissed, they are completely dramatic.
Yeah.
It's like, I love you.
Yeah.
It's the only way they can show their vulnerability. And it's, once you accept that, it's charming and endearing, but it wouldn't be lovely if we gave ourselves the permission to do that more. So why do they fall out with you? What is it that you trigger in them that is so frightening to their ego? Because it wouldn't trigger them unless they knew it was true on some subconscious level. I think you're asking them to confront something in themselves they don't want to.
So the answer I would give you, what I think it is with me, and this is something that I can feel a part of me is a bit worried that I'm going to sound arrogant when I say this, but I have sort of reached a place now where I'm quite comfortable with who I am, and I'm quite comfortable with being liked, not being liked. I'm quite comfortable with saying what I think and then, you know, dealing with it, potentially being wrong. I'm open to all of that stuff. So the key theme that a lot of them level at me that I notice is that they say I keep people in victim mentality, right? Because a lot of the work that I do is like, no. If you're upset about your childhood experiences, what you need to be is upset about your childhood experience,
in your body.
Yeah, so I'm like, the work is just be upset, right? And the work is like, call it what it is.
That doesn't make you a victim.
Yeah, that
empowers you.
That empowers you, yeah. But they'll say that, a lot of them say that that's victim mode, and I keep people in victim mentality. So I believe that a lot of them are bypassing, and by me creating a space to not bypass, it makes them uncomfortable.
Well, you're absolutely right, and that's really key. But this is the thing, they keep coming to watch you because there's a part of them, the self, that deeper part of them that knows you're saying the truth, wants to come, but the ego will just go, no, don't listen to this man. Because he's confronting with the fact they were the victim of something.
Yeah.
Okay? And they need to embody that and experience it to completion, like you're vomiting up that thing and then it's gone. But until then, they are the victim. If they are the ones who are the victims, because it's preventing them be able to be okay with that, because it doesn't make you weak, it doesn't make you a failure, it's just a historical fact that now has to be processed into the thing. So another thing you said, absolutely brilliant, I always say with my clients, prepare to be disliked. You have to have the courage to literally have people hate you.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the thing. And funnily enough, you know, you'll always find the right people then, because you won't people please, you won't have to mold yourself to fit the shape of other people that's acceptable, which is what the whole thing trauma does to you anyway.
Yeah.
And even if people don't agree with you, they will respect you. We don't have to be liked.
No.
It's not important.
No, and I think that's one of the things that drew me to you as well, by the way, because I could tell that you were saying what you thought, and you were comfortable with people making a decision on formulating an opinion on you based on what you thought.
Plenty of people think I'm probably completely dreadful.
Well, no, but this is the thing, and
hello to those people out there.
Well, but I talk regularly about like how what I want from people is I want the way that you make me feel, to match up with the things that you're saying.
It's alignment.
Yeah, so like I can disagree with, like, I won't agree with everything that you say, you won't agree with everything that I say, but I believe that you believe what you're saying.
And it's a truth. It's a truth.
Yeah.
Because if it's someone's truth, like, to see, you can respect that.
Yeah.
It doesn't say mine is different to yours. It's not a homogenous thing, because we're created by context and conditions. Okay, for me to just say, I don't like your trainers. They're wrong. Because I'm wearing some other type of shoe, it doesn't make any difference. Because it's still trying to see things from an egocentric view to try and make yourself feel safe. It's another way of bypassing, because if everyone thinks the same as me, then I'm safe. A key part of when people are dysregulated is they can't hold inconsistencies. We need certainty, okay? Because it has to be this this sort of polarity thing. People who are regulated can hold uncertainties, this paradox. We need to do that. We need to have uncertainty so we can find truth to the next thing. Am I sure about that? Is the world actually flat? No, it's not. You can contain and hold those things while you then investigate it. But if you feel dysregulated, you're constantly searching for control. And this is the key of, I think what you were asking me before is about the control thing and this performative, egoic attempt to control things, whether it's through controlling the bodily functions or whether it's controlling what we think we are, controlling and curating this image that is acceptable, that won't get us rejected like daddy did or mummy did or school did or whoever it did, because you won't care after a while.
Yeah, I think I realised that I think that's one of the big learnings on my own journey, right? Because when I went on the journey, I put everything on my dad first. Yeah, it was like, my dad was an alcoholic, so it all comes from that. And then I went through that stage and then realised my mum, who I'm still close with, there's some stuff to do there. That was harder again because...
Often the way.
Because she's, we have a nice relationship, she's not, alcoholic and all that kind of stuff.
The obvious villain.
Exactly,
but was in some way complicit, but without meaning to, because she was having to maintain herself. Like with my mother, very, very nice. Always mummy was lovely, daddy was a shit. And it's like, actually, how did she let him do that as well? And so that I understand now, because she didn't have any control in the situation. So it's all much more complicated, but then we can update the whole thing and think no one's perfect.
But that's what this is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. That's what this rational way of healing, which feels very performative to me, which feels very what I would call surface level. That's what I see a lot of. So, for example, if I use my mum as a perfect example, right, where I go, I had to do a bit of work around feeling like my mum had let me down, or feeling like what people can't do is that duality, right? If I go, I feel like my mum really let me down, most people go, yeah, but she did her best and she loved you very much. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not what we're exploring here. I can feel that what I'm feeling here, and I know all of them things rationally. The same's true of my dad. I can say to you, I know my dad had a problem with addiction. It was his own stuff. It would come from generational. It was nothing to do with how much he loved me. I can tell you all of that rationally, and still know that there are moments in my body where I go, was I not good enough for him? And that still shows up, right? So rather than pretending that doesn't show up, I have to be more with that.
And do we think it's an infantilized view? The child thinks it's black or it's white. You're good. You're my mummy. You're my daddy. You're safe. You're not. You need this modelling. You see this in small animals. But after a while, we grow up and become the self. And to become whole is not to be perfect. It's to become whole. That's the difference. With these dualities, with all of our this, that, and the other, the stuff we had to put away. We can't be angry. We can't be imperfect. We have to be this, that, and the other. And then to bring that on and think, I still can have that choice. And I can see my mother as an imperfect, lovely person. I understand this, but she did fail me there. I can feel that in my body. And then we move on. But that is a key part of it, because everyone is trying to compartmentalize things in a logical way. Healing is not logical to the egoic mind. It's entirely logical, in the same way as I've constantly say, oh my God, why are we having this hurricane here? This is terrible, it's bad. Well, because an ecosystem somewhere else in the bigger picture did something that this is compensating for. If you step back far enough, you realize that everything is a compensation for something else that has not yet, it's a corrective. So you're feeling anger at your mum or sad at your mum is a corrective for something that has to be felt. And mostly, this is key, the thing you're feeling now is actually to do with the past. And it's when you're safe enough and engaged enough and relationally safe enough with, like, your mum now, that you can safely experiencing that, knowing it's not going to actually fracture the relationship. Because I'm not perfect. Are you perfect? How on earth can we expect other people to be?
Yeah. And
when you can sit with that and know you can still be safe with them, how amazing. Because when someone behaves like an arse, you can just think, well, that's just they're just behaving like an arse. It doesn't make any difference. But this is the problem. And the logic of the system is so much greater than our ability to understand it from this small point of view. You are a whole being with a subconscious, with a history, with mechanisms your conscious mind has no connection to understand. It's absolutely absurd. It's like trying to. This is why all of these biohacking and things doesn't work, because actually the thing it's trying to hack away is the thing that's actually trying to come into consciousness to recomplete. You know, biohacking can be useful as a supportive to when it's very, very intense. Just make it to a level that we can stand in it and allow. It's a bit like waiting till you're strong enough to confront the fact that your mother might have caused you to feel emotions that it didn't feel safe to feel. And it's that thing of understanding I can still love my mum and have anger towards her.
Yeah.
And that's so important. You know, I can still feel weak. I can still have a pain. I can still have a sense of vulnerability and be safe.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's what I think. That's what the healing space in general seems to struggle with. They see it like, you know, it's often sort of seen that every emotion that feels difficult to feel, the healing space is trying to get you to stop feeling it and get rid of it, right? And that means you're healed then, right? Because you'll feel
absurd. And come back 2 years later, they've got a new symptom. You can't. The only way out is through. We know this through consciousness.
Yeah.
And you know, all of this stuff about cognitive reframing, I think you were asking me about that, it doesn't work. It's like, you know, shouting to the basement from the attic. It doesn't work. The emotional centers of the body, they're pre-verbal.
Yeah.
It's like saying to a child, calm down. A baby, it doesn't speak English. Your amygdala doesn't speak a language.
Yeah.
You know, you can't write it out. You have to feel it out. The felt sense in the body. And you know, if you've done emotional work, you feel it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you feel it. You'll be shaking. You'll be this, that, and the other. And that's another thing. People trying to engineer that to mimic it with all this vagus nerve stuff. And don't even get me started on that.
Oh, I'd like to get you started because it feels so prickly. It feels like, you know, it's probably challenging me, some of it, yeah.
Well.
Do you see any good in it?
In what?
The people that do like vagus nerve reset. So a vagus nerve reset online, you know, that'll get you doing some stuff and then...
Right. Do people even know what the vagus nerve is? The vagus nerve is basically it's the place for connection. It's a place for safety. Okay, and of course it's highly important. You know, ventral vagal system, all this kind of stuff. But you can't fake it. You can't fake it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like trying to take a benzo and say I'm calm. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
You cannot trick your brain. Now your alarms are on for various reasons. So you can tap, you can do whatever, you can breathe, all of these things you want to, and what will happen is you will feel calmer.
Do you do any of them things?
No.
All right.
But I tell you what I do is naturally if I process emotions, I will start to quite often make weird noises.
So what does that look like? Not as in, how would you process the emotions? Yeah.
Let's say for people listening, this is a very good way. So let's say you have a symptom, headache, right? You've got a headache.
Yeah.
The first thing you would do is you would become the awareness of the headache.
Okay.
And you would welcome it into your awareness, your experiential awareness. And
how do I do that? Sit with my eyes closed maybe and like...
Yeah. So just like... Let's say, or let's do it even differently. Let's say you've got a toxic thought. So a lot of people are stuck in their thinking and their rumination. Yeah. So what might the thought be? I don't know. Give me an example of a thought that someone might be.
They're going to leave you in the end. That's one of my favourite.
They're going to leave you in the end. So you would stop. You would go to. They're going to leave. Where is that? They're going to leave me in the end. Thought. In my body now. And if you can't find it in your body, what emotion is attached to they're going to leave me in the end? How do you feel towards that thought? What emotion?
Are you asking me to tell you?
Yeah. Does it frighten you?
Yeah, it's like...
Does it make you angry?
Sorrow mainly. It's sorrow.
Makes you sad.
Poor me. Like, poor me. I'm going to be alone again. Okay. Yeah.
So... that's another way you can get past the egoic defenses. Where is the sadness in Josh's body? And you can think about yourself in the third person. So let's think about they're going to leave me in the end. Really let that land in your body. They're going to leave me in the end.
It's a very strong feeling when I check in.
Where is it?
It's like a falling down in my chest from my shoulders down my chest. Yeah.
Exactly. So there you've just contacted the emotion. That emotion is trying to come. It's been trying to contact you, and it's been doing it because we've been ignoring it. It's been doing it through thoughts, often looping thoughts. It's like hello, hello, hello. So this is the point at which you would then go, okay, I am not the one. I am the one that's aware of this sensation. Not only is the container my body, there's something outside of that, which is my experience of it. And you would then say, right, body, show me. You create space to allow it to say, I want my sadness.
Yeah.
I want this feeling. And you create space, and literally you can say more and more and more. You can, with practice, just be with it and let it come to fruition. You won't necessarily feel any better after it immediately. But what you've just done is you've just taken some of this repressed material in the subconscious into consciousness. You've just completed the old trauma response. That sadness little Josh felt when he thought someone was going to leave him has now been dealt with. And you've listened. And you listen, that was wordless. When people say listen to their body, it doesn't mean, I feel really sad, I need to cheer up. I need to go and biohack. I need to go and run. I need to be better so they'll love me. It's providing a solution to the emotion. You just have to be with it. And then if you do need to do anything, because remember, grief and sadness is there as a signal in nature to get you to reconnect with the tribe. If you've lost something, if someone's died, it's the place between loss and completion, is grief, that you now then reconnect, which is a survival response. So you feel it. Now let's just go back to actually the physiological response in your body. As you sit with this sadness, and just think of it, you don't even think of sadness, it's just that. It's just a thing. It's just an energy. Yeah. Okay, in your body. Now you would then say, right, go where you want to go. You invite it to inhabit and to find its dynamic flow wherever it's been trying to go in the system. And if you really get good at this, you'll find it dissolving. It'll be going up into your throat. It'll be going down your arms. It'll be going around your torso. And you can feel it like a sort of ink through water spreading through your system.
Yeah.
And that's emotional processing. As you do that, you might be going, you might be wanting to do the very breath work we've been trying.
So I do this, right? So I've got the main place I do it, and I have a sauna tent in my back garden. Mm-hmm. And that's like my safe space in the house where I go. For some reason, when I'm zipped up in this.
It's the womb of safety.
It's the womb of safety, yeah? So I've got a friend of mine, she was a guest on here, called Leona. Now, she would call it embodiment, right?
But it is embodiment.
Yeah, and she says that, because when I go in the sauna, what you just talked about is exactly what I'll do, right? I'll sit in there, and I'm not always great at pulling it off. Mm-hmm. But if it goes well and there's something coming up for me, that's why I was interested when you said you'll make noises. I can end up in that sauna, and when you said where does that want to go then, what we were just talking about, I could feel my arms wanting to do that. Yeah.
Yes.
But when I'm in the sauna, I'll do that. And I've had moments, right? This might sound crazy to some people. This is regular as well, where I find myself, it's almost like I'm throwing stuff out, making noises, and I'll like end up putting my tongue out and going, nah,
you might
blah,
be babbling in tongues. You might
babbling,
be
yeah. And it all feels so natural. And then sometimes I feel myself, and then I'll be like, I'll make like a releasing shape. This is, I'm putting words to it because it's not rational when I'm doing it.
It's a completion.
And then sometimes, I'll finish and I'll feel myself and I'll go, Lum.
Yes.
And then I curl up in a ball and I'm like,
perfect.
Yeah.
And you see, that happened naturally because it was directed by self, because what happened, you provided safety.
Yeah.
Safety to do this, where you weren't going to be looked at, mocked, interrupted, whatever. And so this is the womb of safety for you in this thing. So this is where that particular biohack is useful, because it provided some safety as a support, not as a solution. So it gave you space to feel safe enough with yourself to do this, to complete it. Now that all of this, quite often when we're having these emotional responses, they will be defenses. You will find yourself, and you'll often do bilateral movements. So it'll be like running away, it'll be punching people, and then you can feel yourself completing something you couldn't do when you were 2.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't have to make sense of it. But the noises, Christ, some of the noises I've made sounds like an animal. You know, it really is animal stuff.
Yeah.
So do you see how to try and mimic that when the brain has said, no, it decided Josh was then safe. He is now enough of an allower to contain the subconscious material and update his ego, which is retrained to be somebody who does feel this emotion.
Yeah.
You cannot fake it the other way. So a lot of people would say, right, we're going to do this special course. We're going to zip ourselves into a tent. We're going to all go and dig around for some feelings. And then we're going to go, ooh, a lot and do shaking. And we all feel really good. We'll make ourselves really tense. Then we can have a TRE expert. We'll shake and we'll think, wow, we've really got some energy. and the self is sitting there going, right, okay. As soon as you get home, back in brace, back in armour, you have to prove you're ready to hold the emotional charge underneath authentically from a place that now sees it as safe.
Do you think there's a space? Because obviously, I do breathwork, so I deliver breathwork sessions, right? I know people who do
What type?
I do conscious connected breathing, and I get people to
How does that work?
Scream at the end.
Be careful about that.
Yeah.
Now, if you can use what you're doing, but reframe it. So you would say, if you feel you want to
which
make
is what
a noise,
I do, yeah.
And I would also say controlling breath is a mistake because it's an autonomic function. So think about it this way, okay? So people who've got air hunger, people who are
Yeah.
So the not logical thing is, well, I need to expand my lungs. I need to do more breathing. But actually you're signaling more danger to the system because you're saying it's not safe to do what it's doing. And in fact, to get rid of that, you have to go through a point of even letting that be worse, and then automatically you're the breather you wanted to be.
Yeah.
So you don't engineer it, which is why a lot of these vagal toning exercises mimic the thing they're trying to do. So they're let's think about it this way. So if this is your consciousness, this is the barrier between the subconscious and the ego is defending this, robustly. This old fear, this old anger, this old, sadness is desperately trying to come up now because I think it's time. But what's one of the greatest mechanisms for the ego is symptoms.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a shitload of anxiety, like absolutely stellar anxiety, because that's going to distract you. That's going to stop you. And so we think, oh my God, this anxiety is terrible. I've got to calm down and calm the anxiety. But actually what you need to do is experience the fear to completion, and then that is no longer seen as a threat.
Yeah.
So you, in a way, you can interrupt it. Now, there is a place for breathing. It's got to be led from the self. It's a connective embodiment thing, But if you're trying to override anything, you'll be at this game forever.
Yeah, so maybe here's the thing, right? I get a lot of stick from breathwork people because I say I get a lot of stick from the breathwork community, right? Because
that's a good sign.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, because I very much say we've been breathing since the beginning of time, and so this isn't about like another training and spending thousands of pounds. And then when I set the breathwork up when I'm leading them, I say, here's the breath pattern that we're going to do, but remember, we're just breathing listen to your body, let your body breathe in what way it wants you to breathe,
yes.
Right? So here's the pattern. That can just help you to focus, but trust your body. We're just breathing, do what your body wants to do. And then I say, if your body then starts to bring emotion, you're letting that come. So let that take over.
That's fine.
So it's more about bringing that emotion up rather than like this. Go on.
Can I just interrupt you? Because sometimes we don't want to bring emotion up because we can't hold it. Then we'll become overwhelmed and you re-traumatize yourself. What you want to do is create space for the emotion naturally to arise.
Yeah. I'd like to think that's what we're trying to do and do it. Yeah.
If we're saying, so thinking about sort of holotropic breath work or something, kind of these things that are trying to create altered states. If you're too dysregulated, what it can do is bring up stuff too much too soon that the ego is going, oh my God, it's more of that stuff. We better double down on defenses. So you feel great.
Yeah.
A bit like you do after a cold plunge. Fabulous. This, that, and the other, and bam, you feel absolutely shit again.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of proved that the way you were feeling before you did the thing was actually dangerous, rather than saying, I'm going to just open myself up. I think it's good what you're saying. If you're saying, we're creating space of an awareness of breath. Let it do what it was. Who is the one who is aware of the breather? Because that's you. The breathe. You're not the breath. You're not even the body. And then just say, whatever your breath wants to do, let it do it. And actually, if an emotion wants to come up, how you feel at the same time, that's a space to do it. And let the breath lead you.
Yeah.
That's the key thing. Because a lot of people are trying to breathe away the feeling, because it's bloody unpleasant.
Yeah.
Let's face it. So it's a bit like saying, like you say, we've been doing this since the dawn of time. We don't have workshops to say how to go for a poo, because that's sort of the thing. Is we're saying we're going to do a poo workshop.
Yeah, but that's the point.
Well, we're just going to do, and literally, actually, probably there is that sort of stuff now as well. But you then don't have to name it, do this, specially engage with it, or tap it away and say, because it's a natural function. What we have to do is allow it to do its thing.
I find that what a lot of the sort of logical, rational people hide behind is that they're promoting safety.
And why do you need to promote safety, do you think?
Because your ego is worried that it's not safe.
Because you've got fucking shitloads of terror that's unprocessed, that's trying to come to light.
Right, yeah.
So true safety
Yeah.
is allowing your self to be with the energy of absolute terror, like we did with the sadness.
Yeah.
And to experience brutal, raw, cataclysmic abattoir levels of, Belsen terror, really point of death terror, somatically. And if you do that for moments at a time, and the brain, the ego and the brain, the same. This is just the computer. We're not the computer. We're the programmer. But everyone's talking about bloody brain retraining. Don't get me started on that. And it's effectively just doing the same thing. You are just going round and round and round in circles.
Yeah.
So if it comes up and you say to the ego, the best way to you can't tell the ego. So people say it's safe. Yeah, that's like looking at my dinner and saying I'm going to digest it by looking at it or talking about it. You have to prove it by actually embodying it. Okay, interoceptively felt. So to tell my ego I'm safe, what do I have to do? I have to allow neutrally whatever arises in the body to be permitted to be there, even if that's horrifying terror. And this ego that said we cannot feel like that as a child because it's going to destroy us existentially will go, hang on, he just sat there with that sadness in his chest and it didn't destroy him. So actually it's updated the program and gone, Josh is somebody who, say previously, never did sadness, who sometimes does.
Yeah.
And after a while, it won't gatekeep in the same way. You'll just be somebody who feels your feelings. And then you won't need symptoms, you won't need the headache as proxy, as the surrogate anymore. You'll just feel, I feel sad. And you'll just be a sad person for 30 seconds a day, and then you won't.
Yeah, the appropriate amount of time for whatever
you
you're
won't have
experiencing.
to tap it away. Like people think, I shouldn't really feel sad. It's like, well, yeah, my family died yesterday. Do you think that's acceptable to feel sad? Yeah. If you didn't, you'd actually be a psychopath. Okay. And yet most people think we shouldn't feel our emotions because it doesn't fit with I think happiness is the one. Okay. So all this positive affirmation and brain retraining, I'm going to have to just briefly touch on this, where you literally, again, NLP, which is what it's based on, is a useful mechanism. It will identify patterns and is based on, Bandler and Grindler computer understanding.
Yeah.
So, you are a set of programs. The ego and the brain is a set of programs, but we're not the computer. So if you've got a program running, you can stop. you can interrupt it. And let's say the thing that's coming up is this intense sadness that might be presenting as a headache, or it might be presenting as fear or whatever. Now, the sensible thing to do is to stop and go, I allow it. I'm going to be with it neutrally. And if necessary, you can recall even a state where you felt able to do that. That's where it can be useful. But what most brain retraining does is it says, sadness is coming up. Oh my God, stop. Let's think of a time when we're happy and slap it back on. So meanwhile, the sadness back into the cesspool.
Yeah.
And it'll just say, right, okay, I'll wait for another time. And it hasn't come out. And then you have to do more and more and more of this to just keep on top of it. You shouldn't have to manage your emotions. And I think you asked me about emotional mastery. That was emotional mastery, what you did. It's just say, be there.
Yeah, I feel that, yeah. Do you think that, to come back to that safety thing, right? And just to talk a bit about, on the breathwork stuff, right? Because I'm super interested by it. The safety thing that I often hear get leveled, right? And people go, oh, we need regulation and we need it, right? I often think that when people are saying that, they're not coming from the altruistic place that they're claiming that they're coming from, right? Because I always say...
Who is this that's saying this, for starters?
There's a lot of talk out there I think when anything gets big, right? So it happens in therapy. Everyone's like, oh, we need a regulator for therapy. It's like counselling. Anyone can be a counsellor. But I've always been of the opinion, if I put 5 people in here, right, 5 different types of people, lined them up there, you'll get 2 or 3 of them, and you could send them on every single course on the planet, and they still wouldn't make anybody safe because they're not that type of person. So my question I want to put to you is, like, what does safety look like in terms of a facilitator of anything?
Well, one, they have to actually be walking the walk themselves. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
I actually know, I have got a bit of, without naming names, I know there are people who are promoting things that they themselves don't follow.
I think that's more common than not. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one thing. I think they have to actually live what they're speaking in some way. There has to be an authenticity about the way they are applying this themselves. And I think the way they live will be indicative of that. Okay. For me personally, as a dyed-in-the-wool socialist and lefty and all of that kind of thing, because I think that's what really is what is needed here, is the equality of resources and support for everyone, regardless, is that I'm highly suspicious of people who are very, very rich doing this work.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's not a vocation.
Yeah.
That's one thing. It's just an income stream. But I'm also highly suspicious of people who want to be very, very rich. Why do they want to be very, very rich?
Yeah.
Because there's something lacking still that's in their basement. Still they don't feel loved enough. Pick last for games, whatever you want it to be, that says, I need to be extra special. I've got to be chicken winging in the supercar somewhere so that someone really loves me.
Yeah.
Then that will make me feel safe in a way I didn't as a child. And I've worked with people a lot of people have grown up in severe poverty, and that felt existentially dangerous, understandably. And the logical, particularly for the way they grew up, and certainly in prison, working with men in prison who came from really, really hard backgrounds, for them to get safety was to have more stuff. And of course, it didn't actually solve the problem for them a lot of the time. So I would posit that people who need to have lots and lots of money are still seeking safety materially rather than interoceptively, rather than coming from an embodied sense of self.
Yeah.
And if you look at all the greatest teachers, just if you're talking about Alan Watts there, or whether it's sort of Buddha or any of these people, they don't need to. Gabor Mate, for example, everyone's heard of. He doesn't need to be rich. Couldn't give a toss. It would be irrelevant to him.
Yeah.
So that for me would be a thing, and that would indicate safety to me. I mean, maybe you're a billionaire, I don't know, but
I'm not a billionaire, no.
But you know.
And I should be a lot richer from what I do. Actually, I know exactly what you're saying because when I say, by the way, when I say I should be a lot richer for what I do, because I say I have a Robin Hood business plan, which is I go into corporates and charge them as much as I can so that I can go out and do
the work. Well, there you go. You're of the
do
same
passionate
mind
work.
as me.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And I tell you what, a lot of that's been found because I wanted. We're running out of time a little bit. There's so much I want to talk to you about, but I did want to talk a little bit. You said about like being a lefty, a socialist at heart, and all that sort of stuff. I see, like, having worked in the quote unquote, and I don't even like the term, but the mental health space.
Yeah.
I see like I see the power dynamics play out there, right? I see a lot of like rich, wealthy people that are like, when it comes to like therapy, for example, academics, then sort of that's used as like a power play that pushes out people that could do some really good work in this world because they won't never, they didn't have the opportunity to become an academic, right?
Well, that's a very good point you're making. So you've got certain groups who are colonizing these jobs and saying that they're the experts. So I managed to say, for example, if you managed to get a PhD in whatever, therefore you know everything. But actually, it really was the luck of the draw, the fact that you went to the right school, this, that, and the other, and blah, 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 that put you in a position where you're able to do, say, the PhD in psychology and this, that, and the other. Yet there might be someone with more native understanding that's really, has been learnt in the kind of, university of life and their own experience, who hasn't been able to access the sort of official model of what would make that safe and acceptable. And I think this is where the mind-body space can be very useful. You've got people who, like my colleague Helma, who has had no mental health experience professionally like I have or whatever, but who got well.
Yeah.
Who got well. So for me, that is absolutely the qualification. That's the PhD.
Yeah.
And for me, that speaks volumes. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that was what you were
No,
saying.
that is what I'm getting at, because
Yeah.
I see that. So like I see that in the quote unquote mental health space, right? There's like a lot of things will get rubbished by people who are academics and evidence-based, science-backed and all that stuff. And then another thing that I realized when my book came out, right, I ended up getting invited to some of these events, right? Mm-hmm. And I was at one event and I stood in there and it was all about fucking meditation and I stood in there and I thought, none of you lot in here would have let me anywhere near you 10 years ago. No. You wouldn't have let me anywhere near you, and we're all conforming. We're all conforming and all talking in this nice talk, and we just want to help the everyday person and all that. And it was in there, and I thought most of you wouldn't go anywhere near the everyday person. You'd cross the street for the everyday person, right? All of you have grown up with way more money than any everyday person's ever been anywhere near. And as you can see, it gets my back up a little bit because then I can see that it's this hyper-capitalist, like we can make loads of money out of people's distress here, rather than being rooted in true safety, which isn't about doing a course in Bali that costs $5,000.
It's definitely not.
No, right? It's about where's my heart at? What are my true values in the work that I'm doing? And there ain't no course for that.
And if you're connected to yourself, I'm I come from a posh background, despite my father being a massive, what.
Yeah.
And I went to public school and this, that, and the other. But when I was 18, I realised, oh my God, I'm a socialist. I left all that, and it's like that's really unfair, because I had a really brilliant time, and that doesn't seem to make sense. And then went and worked in prison and the NHS and all of that. And so it's really interesting because I've seen it from both sides. I still see it from both sides. I have a foot in both camps in that respect.
Yeah.
It's been very useful to be somebody on the inside who can present in that way, but also then subvert it in that sense. Because exactly as you say, and I saw this in prison the whole time, the very kind of people who ended up in prison would be a lot of these people would look down on, and yet there's a sort of vicarious glamour when you do various things. Oh, look, he's, we do a lot of events, because I was doing art therapy with them, and we'd have exhibitions, and everyone comes along and wants a bit of rough and a bit of strange, and we'll just, oh look, bless him.
Yeah.
And I find that really great, but use it, because it means it gives them a little bit of, it's a bit like kind of, Princess Margaret hanging out with the Krays.
Yeah.
A little bit strange. It gives her a sense of it. So work it and understand that everyone is trying to get a sense of authenticity. And I also would say as well, those people who are often promoting from a rarefied place, and to be clear, just because they might have come from a privilege, that doesn't mean that they haven't. Because trust me, the upper
of
middle
course,
classes
yeah.
are
It's
like the
less
most
that they've
fucked
come
up,
from
but they
privilege and
do
more what they're
have
doing with it.
access to services that people otherwise wouldn't have. But a lot of them, they just don't have any understanding really of how difficult it is to access services or to even speak your truth, and they would feel very threatened by people who are meant to be somehow at a lower state than them, perhaps taking ascendancy in this. And who better than someone who has been through the bloody fire? To talk about the fire, because I've actually been in it, you've actually been in it, than someone who's read about it and studied about it. And I think that's a threat, because we're all slaves to our ego. And if you need to be special, here are these kind of, these interlopers coming in and threatening it with their newfangled ways. And the problem is, unfortunately, there are a lot of fucking, shitty, useless, half-assed, modalities and shysters and snake oil salesmen out there. But like you, when you mean it and it's true, people know.
That's it, man.
Always.
That's it.
Emotion, because the emotions are your guidance. It's like, it's the difference is when you meet someone and your guts just go, no way.
Yeah.
You meet them. But the ego will say, yeah, but we should like them because they seem really nice, and performatively they look the same as me, and look at this, and you override it and then you lose your compass. And you can guarantee when your ego doesn't like what your gut's saying, you're onto a good thing, because it will choose for you the person who, I'm actually quite attracted to that person who really I shouldn't be, or I'm really don't want to do that even though I should, because that's apparently better for me, that job. Your gut will never lie. The ego will tell you it's lying. It will try and talk you out of it like a second-hand car salesman, but don't buy away.
And I think that's, I know we're right up on time, so I'm going to have to close this up in a second, otherwise we'll get thrown out. But it is feels quite a nice sort of circle moment there for you to come back to what you were saying about like the heart and what you feel in your heart and what like, the way that things make you feel, because I do think the space, whatever that is, the healing space in general, has collectively started to do the wrong part, which is like, this feels all right. It looks like it's the right way to do it. And then we all stick together rather than people standing up and going, nah, this...
No, it feels good to take smack if I'm a heroin addict.
Yeah.
It feels good to, it's like, don't believe your ego.
Yeah.
It should be the
What's
servant,
the truth?
and it's become the master. Just because you had to be that once doesn't mean you need that anymore. Your guts will tell you. Your mental interpretations won't. And maybe another time we can talk more about emotions, about that, because people don't even know the difference between feelings and emotions. They think their emotions are this story in their head. No. And they're not. These emotions are categorical, bodily felt things, and they will never lie to you.
Yeah.
They will never, ever, ever. They're the ones that will say, don't go down that dark alley.
Yeah.
Even though you think, but what? There's this thing I want. They'll just say, no. Heartbeat.
Yeah.
And you never, ever, ever want to disconnect from that. And that's when we start to bring that back on board. Naturally, we re-regulate because the nervous system has got its flipping guidance system back.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to do all this effing around trying to guess based on what is available to it.
Yeah.
Because we're back online and in balance.
I knew we wouldn't have time to do this fully. I knew we wouldn't have time. We will have to, if you're up for it, we'll have to do it again.
Well,
I'd love to.
Down the road,
I'd
so
love to.
that's
Yeah,
easy
we
for
could
me.
either do it. We could either do it online so that we can do like a proper 3-hour.
Oh yeah, well,
binge. That would be cool. Yeah.
Happy to.
Yeah, Sam, this is amazing. I'll put the links to you and it's your Instagram, I guess, or your YouTube. That's how people get on you.
Don't do it, because I'll get too many messages. If you could just send it to Helmut's thing on the Mindful Gardener.
There you go.
On YouTube. Yes, on his YouTube.
I'll send them to your YouTube, to his YouTube.
That would be great. And if anyone wants to ask some questions there,
perfect.
They can, because I'll ask as much as I can.
Thank you. I look forward to part 2.
Okay, bye.
I did tell you it would be dysfunctional. So thank you for sticking around till the end here. And if you have enjoyed this podcast, then please help me to grow Dysfunctional by sharing with your friends on social media. You can find me at Josh_FFW. And then wherever you're listening to this or watching this, please make sure that you've liked and subscribed, left us a 5-star review and a comment if your platform allows it. And I'll see you on the next one.